you, punk. You got to get ready for the big payback.
This brother has been on the platform a couple times, I believe about 2 times. He's been on the platform, and he is a Washington football team insider. And, he's going to give y'all his takes on what happened last night, what we saw last night, which I'm still trying to process in my mind. I process things easily, but I'm still having a hard time trying to process what I saw with my own 2 eyes, not 3 eyes, not 1 eye, with my own 2 eyes last night. Mr. Lake Lewis Jr., what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? Appreciate you having me back on.
Yes, sir. And we might as well get right to it. Yesterday, the Washington football team defeated the New York Giants 30-29. Taylor Heinicke played good, looked comfortable in the pocket. I'm going to tell you some highlights of the game, and we'll start up with the questions. So Taylor Heinicke led 2 first-half scoring drives and had an even more impressive game-winning drive, finding McKissick up the sideline for a 56-yard gain, leading to an excellent 19-yard throw to, Ricky Sills, tight end. A play later, Heinicke bounced back after a costly interception that gave the Giants the lead, returning a 50-yard game-winning drive of his own. So, Mr. Lake Lewis Jr., I got a question for you. When I look at Taylor Heinicke, I see a guy that has nothing to lose. A guy from Old Dominion. I didn't even know they had a football program over there. Number 2, known as the quarantine quarterback. That's a hell of a name. I just look at him and he's just out there with nothing to lose. And I think that is why he's, slinging the ball and looking comfortable because, when you have expectations and your team is not that great around you, that's a different type of energy that you're dealing with. But when you're overlooked and this could be your last game, you're going to treat it as it was your last game, right? So looking at Taylor Heinicke, knowing from your calculated lens, seeing it from your calculated lens from the Buccaneers game in the playoffs, obviously during training camp, being up there front and center, and what we saw last night. Should Taylor Heinicke have started from week 1 from your observations? And another question, 2-part question here. Is it possible that if he continues to play good and the Washington football team continues to win, that it's his job to lose and Ryan Fitzpatrick might be on the bench once again?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. He should have started from day one. I was saying back in training camp that I just felt like, hell, even back in minicamp, I was saying that I think the job should be Taylor Heinicke's. And there were several reasons for that. The first reason being the last visual you had of Taylor Heinicke was him battling Tom Brady. And he did a great job of that. Those players that played in that game with him remember, they remember him giving his body up. They remember him separating his shoulder and coming back in the game. Those are things that win, locker rooms over. And that night he won the locker room over. Then on top of that, you go out and you bring in a Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I wasn't so much opposed to the move. I was just upset that they basically handed Ryan Fitzpatrick a job that he's never been able to hold on to no matter where he's been. And that's not knocking him. If you play in the NFL for 16 years, you obviously are a professional, you know what you're doing, and you've had some success. But with that said, Ryan Fitzpatrick's best, I guess, attribute for him is that he's a guy that comes in relief of someone who's struggling, not the other way around. So I thought you should have gone with Heinicke from day one. Let him get out there, and if he just couldn't grasp the moment, if that sample size wasn't enough from the Buccaneer game, then if he struggles, then you have your guy who's used to coming in with no pressure on him. And I can say this, I didn't really see anything, and again, this isn't to pile on Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's a good dude, but I didn't see anything in any of the camps, and even in the first 2 weeks of the season at practice, I haven't seen anything that made me go, wow, he made a throw that I haven't seen before, or wow, his leadership qualities are off the charts. I haven't seen anything that would make me think that they just have another quarterback. But at least with Taylor, I saw a guy that can move around in the pocket, get out of the pocket. And I think everyone witnessed this last night. And we've been saying this, people who cover the team, we've been saying this for a long time. He can make all the throws. I mean, he can make every throw you need him to make. Yesterday's game, he started off, he was throwing a little high. But once he got his feet under him, you started seeing the accuracy that he can play with. I mean, he was making throws that we haven't seen here in a while. That's the truth. Throws in the middle of the field, the throw to Ricky Seals-Jones, that's after he looked to the opposite side twice. And then he went back to the other side of the field on a deep corner route. I mean, that's just those throws that we haven't seen too often. So to answer your question, he should have started from day one. And is it his job now? Absolutely. And I don't think it's his job to lose. It's his job. This team's not in the business right now of trying to play musical chairs. They needed someone to get the job, take it, hold on to it, and even possibly put to sleep, having to go get another quarterback next year. I still think they're going to have to draft a quarterback, but the best scenario possible is possibly playing out for this team. And that's, you already have a guy on the roster that can start, that can lead you, that can play. And then you can draft a quarterback and let them go into camp next year, with maybe Heinicke as your entrenched starter, but you draft someone who can battle with him, who can grow with him. And if he beats him out, great. But if not, then you're okay with who you have. That's the way it should be.
Is there growing support that if Heinicke could somehow, if the Washington football team wins the division, essentially, and Heinicke has a good season, and he's like one of the main contributors to them winning a division, is there growing support that he can be the starting quarterback coming into next season? Or is the mindset of the locker room that there's so much talent on this team, it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is, we should win a division no matter what?
No, I mean, I think from what you saw last night, guys play for this guy. You remember the whole, Chase Young Heinicke thing last year. I mean, you saw Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin just talked to us during the week about, he's a leader and he wants to be the guy, and it doesn't matter who's the quarterback. He said, yeah, of course, he's played for a lot of different quarterbacks, and continuity with someone would be great. But nevertheless, he didn't make any excuses or anything. But you knew that was something that's in his mind. What would it be like to play with the same guy? Well, the guy that he played with last night looks for him, and kind of goes out of his way to look for, number 17. And that's what you want. You want a quarterback that's force feeding their best player on offense. And I didn't see that last week in the Charger games. I mean, Terry was targeted one time in the first half. I don't care if they're double, triple teaming him, quadruple teaming him, you still have to throw the ball his way. And that's something that Taylor did last night. He literally was force feeding Terry McLaurin, and that's what this team needs. So I just think right now they have a gamer. Last night was a game where, let's be honest, there was no defense played on either side of the ball. I mean, it was bad. It was just up and down the field by two teams that actually have two of the better defenses in the NFL, at least on paper they did, and coming into the season they did, but they haven't, neither defense has lived up to its billing in their first two games, and it almost cost Washington their second game. It did cost the Giants their second game, but we're going to know a lot more about, I think we're going to know an extremely a big sample size coming up for Taylor Heinicke, because let's face it, guys, they won last night's game, but he only had 3 days to prepare as a starter for this game, So now you're going to have literally a week and a half to get ready for Buffalo. It's almost like the perfect storm at the right time. And it also gives them a chance to have a week and a half to look at what's going on with this defense that was supposed to carry them. So, next week we'll see, in Buffalo, the sample size. Is it enough now to say that this is their guy at quarterback? But if he goes up there and slings it around and they were to beat Buffalo, I think that's going to put any talk of Ryan Fitzpatrick, even if he is able to come back, there won't be any talk about who's the starting quarterback. Ron Rivera and company would be silly to take that kid out of there if he can go in Buffalo and do what he did last night.
You talked about the defense, and I want to stay on the defensive side of the ball here. The Washington football team, their strength should be their D-line, right? And they had an underrated secondary, I thought, going into this year on top of that. But last week, I didn't get to see the Chargers in the Washington football team game. It was week 1. We had a whole lot of things going on. When I saw Justin Herbert and the Chargers won the game, I just said, all right, maybe he's Justin Herbert. No sophomore slump. He's just this good quarterback, this great quarterback that was good last year that's carrying that momentum with that revamped offensive line that the Chargers had. Now we go into this game, and I'm looking at this game, and I'm seeing Daniel Jones look fairly comfortable in that pocket with one of the worst offensive lines in football with a guy that went down early in the game. So I'm saying to myself, what's going on here with this Washington defensive line? So I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's more likely we see, the mojo come back from this D-line? They did make plays. They did get to Daniel Jones a couple times, had a couple sacks in the first half. But the second half, I don't know what happened. Do you think they find a mojo, or do you think it's more likely we see this offense actually being the one that carries this whole entire team going forward?
No. I mean, they're going to get it back. What's going on is that I think Jack Del Rio, the defensive coordinator, is too dependent on rushing four down linemen, and that's it. And I understand those four, first rounders, and we get all that. But if something's not working, you got to change up what you're doing. I mean, you got to send some blitzes, you got to stunt, you got to do different things. And you notice when they started bringing the blitz, Daniel Jones started getting uncomfortable, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You've got to do something to take a quarterback off his spot. If he can stand back and be entrenched in his comfort zone, you're going to lose every game. I mean, at the end of the day, whether you think Daniel Jones is an upper echelon quarterback or not, he's still a professional. He's still in the NFL as a starter, so he can do some things and he can run. That's the other thing. He's killed Washington with his legs in the past, and I was just surprised that they didn't shadow him. You drafted Jamin Davis because he's an athlete. You draft him because he's fast, he's mobile, he can move around, and then you don't use him to his strengths. So Washington now, they have to take the gloves off of him, let him play ball, and not let him be a robot out there. I saw, as the game progressed, they started moving him around, and he started making some plays. Had a really nice tackle on Saquon Barkley, basically blew up Saquon. Those are the things that he's capable of if you let him play and not think. So I think as a whole, the defense, they're thinking. You can see it in the secondary. There was a mixed coverage where Darius Slayton dropped a short touchdown. That's a blown coverage. We've seen a lot of that. How many times did you guys see last night wide open receivers in the middle of the field? Justin Herbert and the Chargers a week ago were just killing Washington, doing the same thing. So the Giants saw something and they capitalized on it. Clearly, Buffalo's looking at the same footage and they're going to see what they can do with it. So I just think for the defense will be ultimately definitely what carries this team because it's just too much talent on the board. I think they're going to have to take a hard look, though, at the Cam Curl, Landon Collins tandem at safety. They're both strong safeties. And for my money, I'm going with Cam Curl. I just thought he played so well last year. He's dynamic. He's playing okay now, but they're moving him in different areas that he wasn't doing last year. So if you can get him back as strong safety and then maybe have a Bobby McCain play free safety or someone that's comfortable at free safety that can be a playmaker and not get lost in coverage, because let's face it, that's not Landon Collins' strength. Coverage is definitely not his strength. I think it'll fix something. They have to show up that back for sure in order to get something up front.
You both hinted at the defense not playing as well as we would like to expect them to play. I was wondering, in your opinion, do you believe is the play calling that's shifting these different coverages, or the players just need to do a better job getting to where they need to get to? Because, like you said, there were a lot of receivers open throughout the entirety of the game.
I think it's both. I mean, again, obviously players have to perform, and the front four isn't generating a pass rush consistently, and that falls on them and their skills. But, you have Jonathan Allen. He's got 2 sacks already. He had 2 last night, and if I'm not mistaken, he got 1 last week. So he's already, 1 away from his season total from a year ago in the first 2 games. So that's a plus. But Montez Sweat got a sack last night. Chase Young was very disruptive at times, but it still hasn't come together completely. And I think with the linebacker core, I think that's the Achilles of this defense. It's their linebacking unit. They're adequate, but I don't see anyone that's, going to go out there and be lights out. They're expecting for Davis to turn into that, but right now as a rookie, he's still finding his way. So that's the middle of the field. That's the part that's getting exploited right there. I think this whole experiment that wasn't of Landon Collins playing linebacker, I think it needs to happen. I truly do. I know he doesn't want to hear that, but and I'm not saying he has to play it every down, but on passing situations, he might be the better, more athletic guy. Him and Davis to stay in, and you got to get Bostic off the field on passing downs. That's just not his game, and he struggles immensely in that department. Cole Holcomb's adequate, but again, they don't have a guy that's just going to lock up tight ends and guys in the middle of the field. And they're going to have to figure that out. That's coaching schemes right there.
Any updates we have on Curtis Samuel? I know he retweaked his hammy in practice, and he's going to be a vocal point of this offense, probably the number 2 receiver alongside Terry McLaurin. Any updates on when we could potentially see Curtis Samuel on the football field?
Well, he's on the injury reserve right now. So, he's not eligible until week 4. So, you have one more game, and then possibly in Atlanta, he can hit the field. I don't know how severe the injury is. I know that the team doesn't give us a whole lot with that, and Ron Rivera's getting frustrated with us for asking. But for my money, seeing this stuff in the past, these are lingering injuries. And, if he's not ready by week 4, that's a problem. Then it's time to be honest about the situation and say, hey, this guy might need to be on the shelf, until week 8, put him on PUP, or perhaps even surgery. And I know Ron Rivera almost, lost his head when the surgery question was asked. He specifically told us right in front of us, that's not something that's under consideration. And it's not even a word they've talked about. So he said he doesn't want to hear that and don't start creating things. But this is our job, not to create things, but to ask those questions. And yeah, I think Terry McLaurin would benefit from Curtis Samuel big time. He's already a great player. So if you can get another player on the field with some speed, it opens your game up even more. So McLaurin definitely would benefit. De'Ami Brown would benefit as well. The offense would benefit to have that kind of talent on the field. But we haven't seen him practice with the team. We haven't seen much from him to know what he's capable of doing in this specific offense.
I want to go back to Taylor real quick, because I think yesterday I was extremely surprised with his pinpoint accuracy and his ability to really give every receiver a lot of different looks and targets. He had 4 receivers with at least 5 receptions, and I believe 5 receivers with at least 3. Was there any shock that he would be able to kind of perform this facet where he was able to just kind of spread the love in a sense, and everyone kind of got a good look at getting some yards in the game?
No, you go back to the Buccaneer game, the playoff game. He was spreading the ball around. Steven Sims had a touchdown in that game, late in the game. They spread the ball around as best they could with him. And that's something that he does. When you have mobile quarterbacks, guys that can run around, they see a little bit more, because I guess their elusiveness buys them more time to see the field. Ryan Fitzpatrick, on the other hand, is more of a, stationary quarterback. And ironically, that's how he got hurt, just not being able to get out of the way of a hit. Well, with Heinicke, because he can look left, look right, you saw the throw to Ricky Seals-Jones. He did just that. Those are the type of things that you're going to get from a mobile quarterback. You look up in Chicago, the big talk about, is it going to be Fields or Dalton? When Fields is on the field, no pun intended, but when he's on the field, literally he can move around and make throws that Andy Dalton would never even attempt, because he doesn't see that. So that's what you're getting with Heinicke. So no, it wasn't a surprise at all. I actually said on my TV spot last week was that you're going to see guys that are going to have their head on a swivel, because the ball could come to them at any time. And a great point that you just made, because you saw that last night.
I know it's probably a little bit premature to bring up Cam here in this topic, especially what we saw with Taylor Heinicke last night. But just going back into the scenario that we saw, obviously, when Ryan Fitzpatrick went down to injury, Cam's name was brought up to the forefront to Ron Rivera. I just think that when you look at the last couple of years, and we all know Cam, had his chances to be a part of this unit here when he was a free agent. Do you have any, upfront knowledge or any assumptions on why, before we saw what we saw yesterday with Taylor Heinicke, just the last couple of years, why Ron Rivera has not attempted to bring in Cam, especially considering the fact that Kyle Allen, who was on this team, backed up Cam in Carolina. My theory kind of is there must have been something in the relationship between the two or something. I don't know. I wasn't there. But when you see a guy like Urban Meyer bringing in Tim Tebow, a guy that didn't play since 2016 for crying out loud, looking out for his homeboy, why we haven't seen Ron Rivera attempt to do the same thing?
I mean, different personalities for one. Tim Tebow and Cam Newton are the polar opposite as far as their locker room presence, as far as, the way they go about things. And I'm not knocking one way or the other, but it is what it is. I mean, Cam Newton's more of a, he'll have the media all around him. It comes with the territory of who he is, the dress and just everything being different. And I think with Rivera, he's got a young football team here. I don't think it's something where, if this was a totally veteran-laden team and they had a veteran quarterback go down, of course Cam might get a call, an opportunity to come in. But this is a different team. This is a team that's building. They're not where they need to be by any means, so they're still building to get to that point. I don't know if Cam is the guy that would take them over the top. That's not knocking him, because I've said it myself. Personally, I would have made a call just to see, interested, what could possibly be. But I also said this too the other day. If Heinicke went out and played well against the Giants, he would put to sleep any talk of Cam, because you don't need that now. You got to remember who's the backup here now, and that's Kyle Allen, who started a game last year for Washington, who came from Carolina, who was there with Cam, ironically. So he knows the system. Taylor Heinicke was in Carolina. He knows the system as well. Personally, I didn't think they needed 3 quarterbacks on this roster, 3 veteran quarterbacks, but they understood the injury history of all 3. And we already saw one play out exactly like the coaches thought. So I'm going to give them a pass on this one. I think not making that call is probably the best thing at this moment. Now, if things change over the next 2-3 weeks, then you might start hearing some grumblings. But I just don't think Taylor's going to have horrible games or anything like that. I think he's entrenched as a starter going forward.
I think. Well, last night when we watched the game, J.D. McKissick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
McKissick. He looked like the primary passing back. I know last season we saw a lot of Antonio Gibson getting a lot of pass catching throughout the game. So do you have any insider knowledge on how they'll play JD throughout the season? Is he going to be primarily like the third down back who's going for the passes, opposed to Antonio Gibson getting those different route runs?
Yeah, I think so. I think you'll see a lot of them on the field together on third downs. A lot of times they'll spread Antonio Gibson out wide, because he did play, wide receiver in college. And ironically, so did J.D. McKissick. So these guys are actually wide receivers that have been converted to running backs at, some point in their careers. Obviously, Gibson's last year as a rookie, but McKissick's was like 7 years ago. So, they're both capable of that. But I also think it spells Antonio Gibson, because they run him a lot between the tackles. And, he is a guy that could be on the field for 3 downs. But if you have a Swiss Army knife and J.D. McKissick, who makes big plays, I mean, he had 80 catches last year. A lot of people don't realize that. That's a lot of balls for a backup running back, So with that being said, I mean, they're not going to mess with, what's not broken, so let's keep it rolling that way. And you'll see more of Gibson getting pass catches on first or second down, as opposed to third down. So it works right now, and I don't see any reason to change it.
I love to hear that, because I got J.D. McKissick on my fantasy squad. So I would like to see those third down passes to him, in full throttle, because I got this guy on my team. But Lake Lewis Jr., I know you're a busy man, so I'm going to let you go here. I want to thank you for coming on and spending your time with us on In the Huddle today.
I appreciate you guys having me on, man. Anytime you want to chop it up, just reach out, and I'm here.
I appreciate it, man. Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That's Lake Lewis Jr., a Washington football team insider and TV analyst, and he has his own business, sportsjourney.com. So plug it in and enjoy some good football takes, y'all. Y'all know what it is. We'll be back from this commercial break.